Hi, Jason.
Hi, Sierra.
So you're kind of always talking about brain science, and I was just wondering if you could tell me a little bit more about how you incorporated brain science into Flow.
Sure. Let me start with just saying I'm not a brain scientist. I'm not a neurologist, but I've just read a lot on the subject and had a lot of good conversations with experts on the topic. And when you think about, PowerPoint, which is the main way people are communicating in enterprise today, it just violates so many of the principles of brain science. So let's just throw some terms around. So there's this little organ called the hippocampus, which is in our brain, and it gives us it has two really important functions. One is it gives us our spatial awareness. It helps us put ourselves into a 3D model of the world. And second, it helps regulate our memory. Well, it turns out that those are both really important things if you want to communicate to someone. It turns out that, a mammal, our mammalian brains, so mammals like mice, are really good at building a mental model of their world and remembering how to navigate through it. That's how they get their food. It's how they, survive, right? Well, it turns out that so much of our symbolic information, like PowerPoint, is done on flat screens. I guess on some level, we've been using flat screens ever since cave walls and then papyrus and books and now screens. And so all of that flatness is fighting with the way the hippocampus wants to work. And every time you take some image and you put it onto a PowerPoint slide, and then it disappears, and you pull up another slide, you do it again and again. Well, each time it disappears, the hippocampus goes, where did it go? What do I do? I don't know what to do with it. It's exhausting. You say you go to a conference and you just listen to PowerPoint after PowerPoint after PowerPoint, and then you go the next day and the next day, and you get home and can you remember any of it? No, it just completely disappears, right? That is exactly what Flow is trying to solve with the way we approach brain science. So by actually putting your content into 3D space, and even if you're seeing it on a flat screen moving around, as long as it's moving, you still get the sense of its 3D-ness, right? And then we don't like steps that just take your prior thing and have it disappear and go to the next one. We want to animate a single data set very often from perspective to perspective. Each time, turn it around, seeing it from a different angle, putting it onto a globe, then turn it into a 3D scatter plot, then put it into a categorized chart. Each of those different perspectives, because of the way it's 3D, because of the animation, we can talk about animation for a long time too, because of the the underlying principle that each point is a thing. Each dot is a survey. It's a human life. And you're seeing these concrete things move from place to place. It's a very different expression of the information than just looking at a bar chart. And then it disappears and you got to look at another bar chart. And then it disappears. You see? So by solving fundamental problems with PowerPoint and the way our brains build mental models, and by keeping things in 3D so that you're building this relationship upon relationship of the information, well, now your brain has somewhere to file it. And the hippocampus is going to let you remember it. And, in an enterprise use case, or, certainly public policy, in almost every use case, if you can get your audience to remember what you're talking about, that is gold. That's pretty nice. Now, the hippocampus also helps us, govern our memories with things like, emotional situations, emotional trauma, maybe that gets burned into our brains in a really powerful way. So that is another way you can, if you beat up your audience, you can get them to remember you, but that's not really practical. So if we can take advantage of the spatial aspects of the way the hippocampus works, well, that's at least a practical way that we can help our audiences remember.
So you were talking about animation and how you said you could go on and on about that. I'd love to hear it. Feel free to go on and on.
Sure, you don't have any choice now. So the way we present information is with dots instead of rectangles, where in a bar chart, every time you look at a rectangle, your brain has to figure out how to give it meaning, right? And again, slide after slide, that's tiring. But if you start a presentation, say, hey, a dot is a person, a dot is a survey result, a dot is a tree. And then you move those from space to space, your brain has a thread, keeps that thread all the way through. But it's only going to keep that thread if that dot doesn't disappear. The dot works best if it stays on screen, and then you want to animate it from one position to another. The way we've built the animations is kind of subtle. If you just had one set of dots and they all instantaneously jumped to a new spot, or even if they moved quickly, what your brain is going to see is it exploded and then it recoagulated into a new form. If you move one dot to the new position and then another dot and another dot, and you've got thousands of dots, well, those dots are going to have to move really fast and your eye isn't even going to see them move. So the way we do it, we call it ripple animation. We take a set of dots and we start them rippling, and then another dots, and they all kind of ripple into place. And when they do that ripple, your eye can follow them, but also it gets a really nice little dopamine rush. Let me describe this. When our brain expects the world to be a certain way, we see something happen like a ball drop and then it lands or it bounces or whatever. It does what it's supposed to do. That's actually a satisfying thing. It's a satisfying thing to see somebody, strike the ball in baseball, right? That's something that is our expectation and resolution. Well, once you start to move the dots, people can start to see the new shape take place. And then as it finishes, it's that same feeling. It just feels good. So it's, in a lot of ways, it's, you think about some of these brain science principles, and we don't want you as the Flow author to have to think about this stuff. We've just encoded these ideas into the software, so it's just the way it works. And that's how we have taken, some of our informed opinions about brain science, and encoded it into the software each step of the way.
Nice. That's a nice little bonus you get. Don't even have to work for it.
Dopamine rush. Just get your data in there and your audiences will be happy.
Nice.
Thanks, Sierra.
Thanks, Jason.